Just making sure you know, because people were asking.
Okay, we should be live any second.
I'm doing good, Glenn. How about you?
I'm good. You know, one thing I love about this company, sometimes it's the little things, but because we're such a Mac company, you can find Mac adapters in like every conference room instead of having to carry one around yourself. That is real nice. I mean,
it's
power
the little
adapters,
things, man.
Not just video, power.
Yeah. You could probably find, like even like a DVI, like a weird DVI one too.
Yep. Man, our DVI sucks though. Like the video, like we got this new beautiful office. Have you seen the new office yet, Hal?
I don't know. How new is it? Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
The one back a few months ago. You sure? I don't know if you've seen
how new is new? Because remember, I came down like the week or a few weeks after you started, and I don't recall if I've been back since.
No. We moved to a new building. It's beautiful.
I did not know that.
Yeah, we're in the same building as Facebook. It's much bigger. I mean, it's like the kitchen is almost as big as the office was. It's a huge difference. Great views on the 9th floor. Yeah, you haven't seen it. You need to come see it.
Okay, cool.
Well, with all your ecosystem stuff you're doing, there's no reason why you shouldn't be... Is that official yet or not yet?
Not yet.
How's it going?
We can talk about that offline. How about that?
Sounds good.
But yes, it is good to talk to you. So let me take a screenshot for the Facebooks and all that. All right, got that done. And, yep, we are live. Hello, Vern. So I assume you've prepared a lengthy presentation and a treatise?
Are you planning like I'm showing code? Do you want me to abstract shit?
No, I actually don't. I actually do not. Okay. Although there are a few user groups who do that. You know, like who go more for the canned presentation thing. For example, Matt Hitchcock, who's in the room right now, he does a thing. I guess it's the Singapore user group. He and someone else in his area. What they do is basically, a kind of a presentation through Link. He's using Link now. But people will share their presentation and talk through it. So more of a webcast kind of a feel. So there are people doing that in the PowerShell space.
One thing that will make you happy, Hal, is today with PowerShell to one of our customers.
I'm sorry, the audio dropped out for a moment. Was that you, Jonathan, or was that me, my side, or his side?
That was me, Glenn.
Okay.
Are you hearing me okay?
I'm hearing you, but there was a dropout, and I'm trying to figure out whose side it was on. It dropped out on.
Your video's frozen, Hal.
You're right. That's because it's my Mac camera. I'm just turn it off.
I'm talking into my laptop.
Your audio is all right for laptop.
I can put on headphones. I have really good headphones. You want me to go put those on?
It might make you look more like us.
It's up to you. I'm not hearing any feedback or anything from you.
Okay. As long as you can hear me okay, that's fine. What I was going to say, Hal, is I once again demonstrated PowerShell today with the Splunk SDK, the new one.
Oh, nice. Awesome.
So let's topic of conversation. And this time, my VM wasn't hosed. So I learned the hard way, because I haven't done this before. Like, my VM ran out of space, and then although I had increased the size of the drive for the VM, because I hadn't actually gone, because of Windows, because I hadn't actually gone in and then increased the size of the partition, which fortunately is very easy now in Win 8, it stayed stuck at the size that it was, and I was really frustrated. I was like, why? I just did this. Why is it not increasing the size of my drive? Anyway, Splunk's not very happy when you fall below that 5 gig limit of space that's left. I'm assuming there's a way I can disable that, but when you're about to present, that's not the time to figure it out.
Yeah, what you need to do is to go into your index settings and basically change them to not use the defaults, which are basically 750 gigs. If I think the number is so it'll. Yeah, so the default is really high. So basically, it'll just go until it can go no more.
If you just use the defaults, or do they actually fill up? No.
No, it will stop indexing before it fills up the OS, the drive.
But when you use the defaults, does it actually create a file right away of that size?
No, it does not.
Yeah, I didn't think so. I better close my Outlook. All right. All right.
Now, like SQL Server will do that.
Yeah. Okay, so what are we waiting for?
Nothing. Just making sure our audio and our video is pretty good. Jonathan, are you happy?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Are we going to be streaming?
We are streaming.
We are streaming.
Are we streaming now?
Yes, we're streaming now.
We're streaming now.
That's how you guys work. Okay.
This whole time we've been streaming.
Say anything under NDA. See, I deliberately did not mention the customer name because I had a feeling. Can't trust you guys.
That is correct. Okay, then. Now that we have that set. So people in the chat room, if you would like to pose questions to the guest, then please do so. And, I think at some point I'm going to bring in Ushin, because he's also in this space. But I think we'll, Ushin, if you're in the chat room there, we'll just bring you in a little while. I hadn't really thought ahead of that part. But, or we can bring him in now. What do you think, Jonathan?
Whatever you want to do, man.
Splug, there it is. Splug.
I don't know. Do you want to make it a party, Glenn, and we'll bring in Ushin?
Bring in who?
Ushin Green. He's a longtime PowerShell MVP. He's a developer type, and he's got some stuff to say on the same subject. So I thought I would give him some microphone time also. Okay.
I'm really
curious
how we're going to do a whole show. I'm really curious how we're going to do a whole show on this, but let's go for it.
No, I've got some ideas. Because the concept of asynchronous programming is something that most people don't even think about on the PowerShell side, right? I mean, there's going to be some definitions and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
Hey, Jonathan, he's ready on Skype.
Okay.
Have y'all met before, Glenn? Ushin?
I don't know if we've met, but
All right.
That's my classic answer these days. I really don't know because I've made the mistake many times of saying to somebody, "Oh, it's nice to meet you," and then immediately I get the, "Oh, you probably don't remember when we met at so and so." So I've started saying, "I don't actually know," or "It's great to see you," instead of "again." Just drop the "again" word.
I'm not seeing Oshin on Skype.
Yes. I totally understand what you're saying.
Which I guess anybody who's watching the stream can see that too. So.
Hold on. I'm just telling Ushin in the chat room there. Of course, he can hear us. It just, won't happen for 15 seconds, that's all. There he is. I can see. You found him. Oh, he's offline. Okay. Anyway. But yeah, we'll bring him on, introduce the two of you guys to each other, and then talk async programming and see what y'all have to say about the subject. Because I don't know a lot, but I just got some outlines of what it is, so I'm interested in the subject. If we can just
I'm sure
get
you're happy
Ushin.
that we found some kind of path forward for...
Yes, especially since we started at like a no, you can't do it almost. Or at least, it was just a ton of work. So.
Exactly. So we're at least in better off place than we were.
Yeah. Okay, what's up, Ushin?
this is like a cryptic conversation you and I are having, where we are the only ones that know what we're talking about.
Yeah, pretty much.
It'll make sense in a minute. Okay, you see it, Jonathan?
Not yet.
He says, see if you can call out to Ocean G, make sure that you've got the right user ID on there.
Oh, he was invisible.
There we go.
I just realized something. This is actually my third time on this podcast. I thought I was only on it one other time, but I was actually on two.
Really? What was the...
Well,
one was Azure PS.
We did one on the Azure... we did like the very first one, and then we did a... I thought we did it. Then we did a second one with Jim and I, didn't we? Or was that...
Oh, yeah. Yes,
because we did
a
first one about the stuff we were doing for Azure. That was completely different than Script CS. And then we did the Script CS PowerShell one. And now this is the third one.
Yeah, something like that. I hear Ushin.
Hey, can you see me?
Are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I
Great.
can. You sound like you're in a
Wind tunnel or
another
something.
country.
So
Sound like
if I
another
want to
country.
see you guys, what do I got to do? I got to go to the stream?
Yeah.
Yeah, and go to live PowerScripting.net and then hit mute on the YouTube widget. Otherwise, it will be wrong. Yeah, you
So
just
what
got
is it
to
again? What is it again?
live.powerscripting.net.
Is there any delay or no?
Yes.
It's about a 15-second delay or so. Just depends.
Okay, where do I mute it? Where's the mute button? Oh, there it is. Mute. All right.
Ocean,
there
are you
are.
on mute? Okay.
Yeah.
I was.
So why
That's
don't I
cool.
show there?
I
Wow,
was
that
just,
does sound like a wind tunnel, doesn't it?
Yeah.
can you hear? Is you having a problem with my audio? Can you? Is that it?
It's pretty noisy. Windy. Sounds like a...
Sounds like somebody's running a vacuum cleaner or like a leaf blower or something.
Really?
Why don't I see my video on there?
Oh, God.
You don't see your
I'm-
video?
You should see it.
I definitely
Glenn?
see an icon that says PowerScripting Podcast. I see Ben, Matt. Oh, wow, we got a lot more people than I thought. But I don't see me.
I think
I see
he's
my
watching
video.
last week's podcast.
Yeah, probably. I think if you go
Is
to
the live video up? Did that
am I
page
watching?
update?
Oh, I guess I am. I guess, that's why I was like, where are all these people coming from?
Oh, you know what, Jonathan? You didn't update the whatchamacallit.
I did update the whatchamacallit. I thought I did.
Nah, it
that?
looks like the old one to me.
Wait,
Maybe it didn't.
what's the address again? What's the URL?
Yeah, hold on a second. Jonathan,
Maybe
it
it
definitely
didn't-
does show the old one to me.
Maybe it didn't sync to the maybe it didn't sync up for some reason. My Google Drive.
Okay. Is it PowerScripting Live? Oh,
It's
there it is.
showing
Video
I
stream.
updated it. Send to you. Oh, come on.
Hey guys,
Sync,
we're
you
new to
stupid
the
thing.
internet.
What about PowerScripting Live? Can I get it from there or no? Is that something completely different?
Yeah.
Yes, that is it.
I don't see anything.
Look at
Oh,
bring up
this is
bring
awesome.
up HipChat, Glenn. Glenn, bring up HipChat. I pasted you a new link.
It's up. It's up.
Okay, and then the first one there under videos.
Oh, I don't have
Got your
a,
name
I don't
on
have
it,
a
dude.
link from you. Did you send me a link? Oh, yeah, there you are. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Why
which
is it-
one do I use?
The latest one. I'll
The
place the
YouTube,
third
the
one. to you.
YouTube, the YouTube one?
Yeah. Just
Why
The
isn't my
YouTube-
Google Drive syncing? This is not okay.
okay.
This sounds like one of the
Google,
demos.
you have failed me again.
one problem at a time, guys.
Oh, there we go. This sounds like one of the demos that I recently just gave. Like,
Well, this is the behind the
that's
scenes,
attractive.
right?
It is definitely behind the scenes.
So, Ushin, if you want to just...
Is it working now, for Pete's sake? Can somebody refresh?
I see video.
Yeah, if you're on the right URL, then it's great. Jonathan's asking... Yes, Jonathan, it is working now. I just
Okay, I
checked.
had to... For some reason, it didn't sync from my local Google Drive folder up. So I had to manually copy it, which is lame.
Okay,
We
anyway.
lost Glenn.
We lost Glenn? I see him. Oh, I'm looking at the stream, which
He's
is
gone.
a few seconds behind.
He'll be gone in your
Skype.
future. He's gone in your present.
Oh, well.
You'll see it in the
I
future.
do see Ushin picking his nose.
It says busy. Call to Glenn Block. No answer.
Busy.
Why can't
What?
we interview people who have, like, like a decent internet connection?
Hello?
Or...
He's
Hello.
back.
Are we all back?
Maybe.
Nobody else left.
Saying internet connection
Don't get-
problems.
Don't get snarky.
Dropping me out again. I don't know what's going on. Maybe I should go to our Splunk guest network.
Mm.
I'm going to try that. I'll switch to
Okay.
guest. Let's see if that works.
Hold on, Jonathan. Hold on, chat room. Thank you, everybody, for being patient with us. Do we lose Ushin? Are you still there, man?
I'm there. Wow, that was pretty seamless. So I switched networks and Skype stayed on. That was
Oh, cool.
pretty impressive. I didn't expect that to happen. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Let's try sharing again.
And your video's back.
Awesome. Now, let's go back to Ushin. Ushin, are you there? You're muted. I see your mouth moving. I'm like looking right at your mouth and I see your mouth moving without any sound coming out.
I'm there.
That was hilarious.
Why is my video not showing?
Yeah, if anybody was had the benefit of watching Ushin's video at the time, that was hilarious.
There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Is
Yes.
it better than before? Because I took the headset off. I think there's something wrong, or I don't know.
Yes.
I blame Skype.
I'm sorry. I'm having a good time with this, and to the chat room.
I'm glad
Yes,
you're
I'm so
having a
glad
good time.
it's not looping.
I'm glad
No,
you're having a good time.
This is not well. Okay, so this is not the fun part for everybody. Perhaps I'm amused, but you know what, Glenn? You look a little bit like one of the blocks on was it Eighth Enough Brady Bunch?
Yeah.
With that,
Yeah, he
with that
does.
solid color
On the
background.
Brady Bunch.
He does.
There's no blocks on the Brady Bunch. What are you talking about?
No, you know what I'm talking about.
In the intro, wasn't the Brady
Yeah.
Bunch that had the blocks?
Yeah.
The screen
was.
split into a grid, and everyone's like looking at each other out of the corner of it, being all silly
Yes.
and pointing at each other. Yeah, I remember
Yes.
that.
So, Glenn, I want you to meet Ushin Green, longtime friend and PowerShell MVP. Ushin Glenn, the Azure
Nice
PS
to
guy,
meet you.
now it's Splunk.
Hi, nice to meet you,
Okay.
Ben.
Nice to meet you as
So-
well.
Ushin is from Canada, but not originally. I'm not sure if you can tell by his accent.
Top of the morning.
So, let's see. I think we're probably about to get started. About to be ready to get started. So, let me see here. Yep, you've both been on the show before. All right, cool. I'm ready. Jonathan, are you ready? Did I share the show notes? I did not share the show notes with you. Do that really quickly. Sorry, everybody, for the logistical challenges. All right. If y'all have links or anything, drop them in the show notes. I mean, in the chat room, we'll put in the show notes. And if you would like to ask questions of our guests, then put a couple hash marks in front, and we will weave those into the conversation and stuff. All right. You're ready to go. Tonight on the PowerScripting podcast, we have not one, but two guests. I was about to say not one, not two, but three, but we actually have two guests. Glenn Block. Glenn, welcome back to the show for your third time. That's your cue.
He dropped.
And we dropped Glenn. Well, then we'll greet Ushin. Ushin Grian, welcome back to the show.
Thanks.
My internet is really flaky. I thought staying in the office would make better internet, but it doesn't seem to be the case.
That's okay. We'll see how it works out. So Ushin, we haven't talked to you in forever.
No, I know the last time, I don't know when it was. I think it was on my own one. I think is this probably my third, or maybe four. I don't even know. The first time, I think it was about. What was it? I think I did a presentation on the community extensions. I think on my own, and then after that, I think I shared some airtime with Brandon. We had a good laugh over that. He continually mocked me about being Canadian, even though I'm not Canadian. But I took it on the chin. It's all good. What else? And then the last time, I don't know. Maybe this is the third time. I don't know, but it has been a long time. At least 4 or 5 years.
I think I was on my own one. I think it's.
Whoa, we had a loop there for a moment. That's okay.
It was me. That was me. I refreshed because it wasn't responding.
That's okay. I can roll with it. So, Ushin, thank you for joining us. I will. We've got an interesting topic that I know that you had. Joel said you had some stuff to talk about, and I believe him, and I believe you. So,
sure.
Let's start it off with Glenn. Glenn, welcome back to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me back.
So last time you were here, you were with Microsoft. That is no longer the case, I believe.
You believe?
Tell us
or
what you do now. Well, I mean, you're a coworker.
I work at the same company as you. I work at the same company as you. I work at Splunk, and I drive our developer platform.
So how has it on good authority that you're no longer with Microsoft?
Yes.
So, and much as it may seem coincidental, Hal is not responsible for my joining Splunk. But
correct.
It was a very nice discovery to find out that you were here when I...
It was just good timing.
It was.
Fortuitous for all of us. So let's the topic that I wanted to have you come on for that we kind of got into originally, there's got a little bit of backstory to it, and it starts with Azure and the PowerShell commandlets that you. I mean, we had you on the show a long time ago to talk about, but why don't you kind of go back a little bit to explain, some new features in .NET and what they have to do with anything in PowerShell.
Okay, well, so traditionally when you've built applications in .NET, it has led you down a road of building things in a synchronous manner. Synchronous manner means is that, let's say I have to make a call to some type of server. I write code that calls that server, then the results come back, then I do something with those results, and that code is very easy to write. The problem is that code often does not scale. So basically when those calls are happening, they're happening in a blocking manner. Whenever you're accessing network resources in a blocking manner, what that means is that until the response comes back, then there is the application really can't continue processing. This really hurts you in web application scenarios. So one of the things about Node.js, which I did a lot of work last couple of years before joining Splunk around Node, is that it's really designed to make it really easy to write async code. I wouldn't say it makes it really easy, but it's at least designed with this. I wouldn't even say it makes it easy. What I would say is that it's designed so that the kind of code that you write is non-blocking, so that your web server can support more concurrent requests.
Can you do
Go
me
ahead.
a favor and relate this to some concepts that either are native to PowerShell or that are kind of related to it? So what I mean by that is threads and run spaces and jobs.
Jobs, I think, do execute in an async manner. And you can correct me on this. I remember we did some work on this. I'm not the, as I've said before, I'm certainly not the PowerShell expert, but let's just take a perfect example. Like, let's say I was doing, I'll use the Azure ones as an example. So we have our Azure PowerShell commands. And maybe what you want to do is upload a bunch of things to blob storage. Now, if you do that synchronously, that's going to be really slow because you're going to have to upload one, then wait for it to finish, then upload another, then upload another. Now, what you can do in PowerShell is you can create jobs. And you can spawn those jobs off in parallel so that they basically go and upload all the time. But the challenge that you have is when you actually want to do things that are async so that you can handle more processing concurrently, but you still want it to happen sequentially. So like maybe I'm running these, maybe I'm uploading these 10 things, but after those 10 things finish, I want to do something else. So sequence in an async world can be difficult. Now .NET provide, so anyway, so the place where I think async comes in, or would come in PowerShell land, would be if I was able to spawn off multiple things but have them run in a non-blocking manner. So when I do those jobs, I can create multiple jobs, but the thing that those jobs are invoking may still be synchronous, which means that there's a limit of how many jobs I can run at the same time, actually, because only so many can be running if I'm utilizing application threads. But when you do things in an async manner, you're basically alleviating the application thread so that you can still maintain sequence. So I can have a job that has to do a series of things where it's going to process one thing, then it's going to do another, then it's going to do another, but I want it all to happen in an async manner. So I want to run step one, and I want step two to only run once.
Now this is kind of something that visually people can get a good feel for whenever there is, I guess if you were to make a GUI, I think we might have dropped his audio for a minute. If you make like a GUI application in PowerShell, then when you draw the form and it's waiting for you to click on something, you might only be able to click on one thing, and then it's going to execute a handler, but you can't click on anything else in it, and that's that's kind of like blocking versus non-blocking.
Are you still hearing me?
Yeah, but you keep dropping out. It may help for you to stop streaming your video so you have more bandwidth for your audio.
Okay, or I could call in.
We could call him.
Well, I think he muted his audio instead of his video.
I just muted myself. Yeah.
Good one.
Perfect. All right.
Brilliant.
There we go. Okay.
While you're doing that, let me go to Ushin for a moment. So, Ushin, why don't you kind of is there anything you want to bounce off on as far as conceptually of synchronous and asynchronous and blocking and non-blocking and all that good stuff?
Sure, yeah. It's true what Glenn says. I mean, in PowerShell, the concepts of asynchronous and synchronous do exist, but just not. They don't really have big labels on their forehead saying "I am async" and "I am sync." It's true that jobs could be treated like a thread in that you can give it a script to run and it goes off and it will come back with the result later. It does run in the background, but it does run off as another process. So in a sense, you can think of it like it's another instance of PowerShell goes and runs in the background, runs your script, and then will return the results back to you. And
it may have a
separate
different
process,
environment and all that.
yeah, exactly. I mean, so if you have variables, pointing to the live objects in the current PowerShell process, a lot of the time you can't really send them across a job because they need to be serialized and then deserialized, which means they need to be literally, it's like someone getting a pen and paper and transcribing all the characteristics of this thing, and then someone else being told to rebuild it from the characteristics written on a bit of paper. It's a copy, it's not a live thing. So those jobs are limited that way, but they're good to go off and catalog machines and send data and return, CSV style data, so you can do it that way. And then again, run spaces were also mentioned. You can have something called a run space pool in PowerShell, and a run space can be thought of as an area to run a script, hence a space that can run things, and it also has its own collection of variables and loaded modules and loaded scripts. So it's a separate namespace, but again, it does live in the same PowerShell process. So technically, it's possible to share live objects truly between run spaces, but the problem is that PowerShell doesn't have any native.
It's not like a first-class citizen, is it?
Yeah, it doesn't really have any way to help you organize your access, because sometimes you may have multiple run spaces that are running scripts, and they're all trying to access the same object, and you don't really have any native way in PowerShell to ensure that it doesn't try to access the same object at the same time or in the wrong order. And things like locks and
okay, so it's still kind of half of a solution.
Yeah.
It's not really.
Yeah, it's more plumbing for other people to build things on.
The other problem with it is it doesn't have compatibility, and this was, I think, something we were leading into, with the async await features, the async capabilities that have now been added to .NET. So if you are consuming APIs that are designed with this new async model in mind, you don't get a lot of first-class support. You can work around it, but it's not ideal. It's not what you would hope and what you would expect to have, and it ends up actually making async code run as synchronous. So you lose a lot of the gains of having that asynchrony in order to get things to work in PowerShell. I just wanted to push on something you had said, Hal, earlier about building UIs. As you said, if you want to have a responsive UI, like let's say you were using our PowerShell commands for Azure, and you were saying, I'm going to build a UI that's going to go out and query a bunch of stuff. But then I see the query's taking too long, I want to cancel it. If you don't have good support for async, then your UI is going to get blocked. You're not going to be able to easily, the cancel is not going to work that well. So it definitely pours into UI scenarios. But the places where I've been most concerned is that we are building a new library for Splunk, a new SDK, which is a portable library, and it's all async. So and for those of you that are now familiar with async, in .NET 4, this new API was introduced called the Task Parallel Library, and it has this class called Task of T. And Task is a way to run code actually in parallel. It wasn't originally designed really for asynchrony, but asynchrony was one of the things it could do. And in .NET 4.5, a bunch of investments were made to make Task better for async. But more importantly, there were investments in the language so that writing async code just becomes a heck of a lot easier. So when you work with the Task Parallel Library, you can do things like have step A that makes an async call and step B that runs after it. But the code that you have to write, you have to do what are called continuations. You have to write a bunch of lambda expressions, and the code just gets ugly really quickly, especially if it goes deep and there's a lot of things that are happening. Well, with .NET 4.5, you now have a command called await. So I can just await the result on an async call, and it makes the code very clean. It looks like I'm writing code that is executing in a blocking manner, only it's really not. It's executing sequentially, but sequentially is not mutually exclusive blocking.
Let me set this up from how my point of view was. So from time to time, working in PowerShell, I would come across the need to create a module doing something with an external library, something I'd never touched before, but hey, somebody wrote, posted a DLL on Coplex or whatever. I grabbed it, I pulled it into PowerShell using add type, and I could access some properties and methods, and away I went. That mixed results, but it usually worked, and that's that's how history has been. And then what I found out, and this was in this case, it was through the work that you were doing with the Splunk C# SDK, was that wait a second, Microsoft did something with their left hand where they're making new features and functionality in .NET, which is great, but on the right hand, when I took that DLL and brought it into PowerShell, I was not able to use it. And the question of why, the answer to why was because you were using async and await, and that's where it gets a little hazy for me. Do you want to explain why that didn't work? But my point was,
well, there actually is a way to get it work.
C# is for Microsoft.
So the reason it didn't, so it turns out there actually is a way to get it to work, as you know now. But so first off, the reason it didn't work is that async await is actually a syntactic sugar. It's a compiler sugar. It's making, I told you about how you could use task to write code that was async, but in the old days it was very ugly to do it. So async await brought in first-class language support to make that easier. But what happens is that when you have a function or a method that is performing some type of async code and you're using the async await, that method is actually returning an object called a task. And that task is like a future. That task is an object that is a pointer to, attached to it is some code that will run in an asynchronous manner, and at some point that task will complete. But what happens, and what you found, is that because because PowerShell doesn't have the support for execution of tasks and running them in an async manner, then when you called those APIs, like you called, for example, in our new Splunk SDK, you create this thing called a service, and then on the service you call a method. It used to be called login async, now it's called logon async. And that returns a task, because everything that you do in when you're dealing with the new async capabilities under the hood, it's using tasks. So if you just call logon and you don't do anything, the logon will never actually happen. But what you need to do is, off of that task, there's a property that you can access off of any task called result. And result forces that task to execute. But it executes in a synchronous manner. So you could argue it's a little bit self-defeating. And once it executes...
what you're saying is then the objects upon which everything that uses these keywords, this API, everything that uses it, they all have that result property?
Well, unless they're an async void, you can have an async void that doesn't actually return. Well, I think it still actually returns a task, like your method. Let me think about that one. Yeah, you can have an async void. I think it still actually has to return a task. You can declare it so that you don't have to write the task, but it actually ends up having a task. Yes, basically, they all return this task object, and you need to know that you're going to access the dot result on that task object from PowerShell to force that task to actually execute. And when you do that, though, don't deceive yourself into thinking, wow, I got async to work. You did not. What you did do is you got that task to execute in a synchronous manner. But it makes that library usable from PowerShell, whereas without having the support, it's not usable from PowerShell. Now, that task can return a value. So when you access .result, it may actually return a value to you. Because, like, when I log on, there's no value that gets returned, but maybe there's an exception. If there's an exception, that task will be in an exception state. So you then have to know also to, like, poll that task to see if there's actually an exception, because it won't throw an exception. It will actually just set an exception property on the task, and the task also has a Boolean value that you can use to check it to see if the task completed properly or not. So it's not quite as nice. A first-class experience would be that I could somehow in PowerShell call some type of await command, like maybe there's a, maybe there's actually a PowerShell command called await or something like that, that I can then call before I invoke this method, and that thing would cause it to do the right thing and actually execute in an async manner. And it would also maybe bubble up the exceptions automatically so that they would write out. So there's a bunch of stuff that needs to get done to make this a first-class experience. But at least, as we found out, you have some. You don't gain the benefits of the asynchronous, but you can at least use the API and take advantage of what the API has to offer. And you can wrap, the beauty of PowerShell is you can write little PowerShell scripts to wrap on top if you want to make it so that it automatically does that result for you, so you don't have to see it.
So, Glenn, if I could maybe add a little bit to that, can you hear me?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah. One of the nice things about the async and await stuff inside, writing regular C# or VB.NET or F# or whatever, is that you can write a method that is asynchronous, and inside that method you might have 4 other things that it has to do, but all of those things can happen in any order inside the method. But the caller of that method doesn't need to know that at all. So they just call the method and they can wait on that method, but when that method runs, it then spawns out 4 or 5 other things that get spin up on threads, and it will automatically wait until they're all done before telling you it's finished. And there is an analogous operation you can do in PowerShell for that. It's with jobs. You know that there's a wait job commandlet in PowerShell, and what that lets you do is if you fire off maybe 15 jobs to go query some remote servers, and you get returned back these jobs. Now those jobs are more or less equivalent to getting back a task in .NET with the TPL, the task parallel library. And then you
but those jobs execute asynchronously, though, right? They don't. Yeah. I mean, those jobs are executing in parallel. They don't execute sequentially.
Exactly. Yeah, jobs. I mean, it's down to the implementation of the job itself.
My point is, await is really about sequential. Like when you gave your example, if you've got a method and that method then inside is awaiting other things, those are all running sequentially. Now they can also spawn off new tasks.
I used the wrong language there. You're right. I mean, when you use await inside there, it's shorthand to avoid the callback hell. You're right. They are actually happening. You're reading them in a linear form of the method, but they're happening in sequence. But I meant to say if you gather the tasks and then just do task.waitAll, then you can kind of group them together like that, and they will run in parallel. Sorry, you're right. Using the wrong language. But the trick is that you can actually equate jobs to tasks in this case. So, in my opinion, the way forward there for PowerShell to have a smoother interaction with these kind of APIs is to try to convert them into jobs. Now,
is that something? Hold on for a second. Is that something that's practical for everyone? I think that in this case, Glenn speaking in his Splunk role is probably going to be a typical case where they do things in C#. I mean, his team does things in many languages. C# is one of them, but they do things in C#, not necessarily in PowerShell. Like that may be a target, and it may be one that's growing. If I have anything to do with it, but he's making C# SDK. PowerShell is kind of the okay, let's make this accessible from PowerShell, and that's what some of my discussions with him have been. But switching to using jobs wholly would be more different work. Yes.
Well, I'm not saying that the Splunk that you guys would have to use jobs now.
Right.
From
I think he's
PowerShell
saying it would be implicit. Yeah.
Yes, from PowerShell 3 onward, Microsoft added a job source adapter that pretty much nobody really knows about because there's very little examples out there on how it works. That lets you extend PowerShell to provide your own jobs. So, like I said, the ones that come out of the box since the very start are very heavyweight. They spin off entire PowerShell processes to run the jobs. But you can write your own job source adapter, and it's basically a module that you load into PowerShell, and then you basically have new types of jobs, but they work with the same built-in command. It's like wait job, get job, remove job, start, stop, suspend, and resume job. So I've actually started writing that about 3 weeks ago, and
so here's a short version that Joel just wrote in the chat room. Tell me if you're talking about the same thing, same concept. Joel said, what we need is for tasks to be jobs automatically.
That's
kind of where you're going?
That's what I would say.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
They're not. It wouldn't be automatic, but I've written a commandlet that does that right now. So there's 3 types of main asynchronous APIs in .NET. There's the old school begin-end pair. There's the new style async, and then there's the WinRT async stuff as well, which is slightly different, but looks the same in C#, but it's actually a different API under the covers. So I'm trying to cover all 3 cases, and they get magically turned into jobs. So right now I have the WinRT one done, and I have the begin-end async done. I just haven't done the regular async. They all get turned to tasks. They all get turned to jobs, so that you can actually write a PowerShell script right now with these commandlets, in the same style as you would in .NET. And it kind of replaces the work you would do with await and async in .NET. So that's basically what Joel's saying is basically right. Yeah, it's just very tricky to do because PowerShell doesn't give you a lot of hooks for that.
Gotcha.
So that sounds great. So what you're saying is you've written a commandlet, and would I be able to just put that commandlet on the other side of? Because I think the thing too is. So what you would do is you're basically saying that I would invoke this commandlet, and then would I use piping or something, or how would that work? Like, would I pipe the result into this commandlet, and then it turns it into a task, or how does that work? I mean, it turns the task into a job. Is that the idea? You do piping, or
the job wraps it all up. I mean, the job will automatically, when you do receive job, you'll get the result as long as the job is completed. You know how the jobs normally work? Is that
No, what I mean is, like, let's take my example. So you're invoking our API. So would you basically saying that I would create a job that invokes that API? So I would define the job, and when I defined the code that was going to execute for the job, I would just call my async API, and then it would know what to do with the result. Is that basically what you're saying?
Yeah,
and it would say, okay, I'm assuming because you're calling me that you're going to give me back a task. I will then take that task, turn that task into a job, and have it execute. And then what you'll get back, what you'll do is just monitor the job like you would any other job, check when it's completed, etc.
Yeah,
that sounds reasonable.
Set up you assign an action to it like any other job. It'll run the script when it's done, or just watch its state changes. I have 2 models, actually, that I was playing with. One was event-based, and the other was job-based. Now, if you look at any asynchronous piece of code you do in .NET, there's always a single thread at the start whose job is to coordinate all the parallel work going on. And you can almost treat that as a synchronous run from start to finish. It's saying, okay, run this method, wait for A, B, C, and D to finish, then go on, do the next thing, wait for F and G to finish, then do the next thing, wait for H or J to finish, and then I'm done. So under the covers, as you know, the compiler turns that into a lot of state machines. So it watches what's going on. It's to get around the continuation hell. And in PowerShell, you can do the same thing. You can actually write a very simple state machine in script and use the eventing framework to call back into it. Now, I don't know, Hal, if you know what a state machine is.
Define that, please. I sort of do.
Yeah. It's kind of like writing a program that has different behaviors depending on the inputs and outputs, and that's pretty generic. But think of it like a text-based adventure game. You start off in the first room, and you see exits north, east, and west, right? And then suddenly an event comes in that causes you to go east, and you go into a new room, and in this other room, you can only see north and south. Something else comes in, then a south, and then you're back into a different room. So external influences change the state of your program, which causes it to offer up different choices for other external events coming in. So it's driven by external events. So the trick is, with using a state machine in PowerShell, is you write a script that offers this type of functionality, and then when you want to run a load of asynchronous code using the asynchronous APIs, I use my command again and say, call getFileAsync, and when it will return back then an eventing subscription, just like any other event, and you can watch that event and wire it up to your state machine. It's another way to do it, rather than rely on the jobs. So that when the event actually fires, when the asynchronous message finishes,
most protocols are implemented as state machines, where like you think about how a network server is implemented. Like you're going to have a handshaking. It's this idea of moving through different states as changes are happening.
Mm-hmm.
So for developers, I think the concept of state machine is something they're very comfortable with, but I would imagine for many admins that they may not be familiar with that term.
Well, I definitely wanted to relate it to things that people, of different backgrounds would use in different places. So, any time that you need to understand the current state of a system, right? I mean, it can be a very generic term too. So we had who was it? I want to say it was Trevor Sullivan came on about a year or so ago talking about WMI eventing, and there was some similar theories or concepts that we dug into, especially related to just the thought of having code that executes when it's told to by an event without you interactively you're not running a commandlet. You're saying you could go wait for this thing and do it later.
Right. That tends to be kind of a state-based thing. When this thing happens, Yep.
So okay, that's cool. So now Glenn, your end state. Well, I guess maybe not the end state, but the state where you are today, where you came across that result property on the objects, and I guess you did just do a couple of demos that were successful, where using a quote unquote, let's just say using a modern .NET implementation of asynchronous programming, you were able to access everything to a great extent from PowerShell. Is that a pretty good summary?
It is, but it wasn't taking advantage of the asynchrony. And so I think, what Ocean was describing is, hey, we can write some infrastructure that will do that in a proper way. What I basically did was, so when they designed Task, they designed it with the idea that there's this result property, and that result property, when a task runs normally in an async manner, that result property gets populated once the task completes, unless there's some type of exception. But they came up with a little shortcut that said, hey, if you want to force this task to execute right now, just access its result. It will force it to run. And my demo that I did basically was doing that. So I was logging in, and I was doing login.result. Now, one thing to think about if you do go down this path, as soon as you do that, the result object, which is a task, also gets logged out to the console. You end up seeing one of these messages. So I also started piping to out-null. So when I would do login, I would pipe to out-null so that I don't get this output of dumping the task object to the UI, to the console. So that was mainly what I did, which can get a little painful if you're doing a lot of it. But basically, always access .result on the task, and then if it's a void, if the way the method has been defined is as an async void, then I pipe to out-null. If the method is actually returning a task that has a value associated with it, I'm going to save that value. So I'm going to do like when I go to, once I go to make my connection, maybe I'm going to do a search with the Splunk SDK. I can do a search and I get back a results object. So there I actually would have like a $ results variable that would be equal to, and then I would do service.
Okay, but it wouldn't actually do the task until you then take that object and call something else?
It does the task as soon as you call .result. Let me make it very clear. When I access .result, in this case, if the task hasn't started yet, that's going to force it to run in a synchronous manner. So what I'm doing is using an async library in a sync manner. That's basically what I'm doing. I'm not getting any of the benefits of async when I use this approach, but it's usable.
But you could, in theory, you could start job that thing.
Potentially, yes. You could start a job. You could start the task, and then you would have to have a job. And I guess Ocean can describe what he's done. Do you want to talk? Can you talk a little bit about what you did under the implementation, like as part of your conversion, and how you monitor the task state and all that? Do you use continuations, or what did you do there?
Hey, yeah. Well, it's kind of fun, right? Because if you can imagine, I could talk to you about the two approaches I've covered so far. Of course, when I do these things, I do it on my own time. No one's paying me, so I always start with the most difficult stuff first because it kind of keeps me interested. So I started on the approach of trying to make. I wanted to turn the begin, the old style, the convention-driven asynchrony APIs in .NET, where you'd have begin something and then end.
That was
something.
the event. That's the event-based mechanism.
Yeah, and the begin method always looks a certain way. Yeah, the begin method always looks a certain way. It has a minimum of 2 parameters. It's the async callback, which is the delegate you pass it a method that will accept an object, and then a state object which you can pass in.
Yeah,
and then
this is the async callback stuff.
Yeah, but it could have up to that's the minimum you have, and that's essentially a void begin, asynchronous begin method. But you can have multiple extra parameters on like that. You might want to pass a number, a string, a hash table, and then the callback and the state. So you've got 5 on it. So when I want to turn these things into jobs, my problem in PowerShell is that I've got a commandlet that almost needs to dynamically hook up these events. I'm not a compiler, I'm actually a commandlet, so I need to use reflection to look at the methods that are being passed into me. And the way that I do it is that I try to make it kind of nice and clean in PowerShell. You'll notice, Glenn, that when you look at methods in PowerShell, let's say you use like string with square bracket string, colon, format, but you don't pass in the parentheses or the parameters. You just hit enter to look at the actual method. And PowerShell represents that as a PS method object. It's system.managementautomation.ps method. So my commandlet lets people pipe in PS methods, so it gives a nice clean syntax. So you don't actually have to call reflection APIs or anything to get a handle to the method to pass it in. So my commandlet accepts a PS method. It then looks inside that reflection to see the actual .NET method that's there. I then enumerate the parameters on the begin, and I have to dynamically build a delegate there that will be called in the future. I then use a task factory to convert the begin and end pair methods into a task. There's a factory method there that will take a begin and end method of variable parameters and convert it into a task. But again, the problem is that this is great at compile time, but at runtime I don't have any of these tricks. Because if you think about what's happening there, when I pass in a delegate that represents a begin method, and then pass in a delegate that represents an end method to the task factory that returns a task from those delegates, the compiler will do the overload resolution for me and choose the right type of task to generate in the code. But inside PowerShell, I have to do this dynamically. So without getting too much into the details, I had to reverse engineer how dynamic works. A dynamic uses a call site. Call site is a way of taking the logic in the C# compiler that figures out what methods you really want to call, be they generic or not, and it will choose the correct method and emit the right code into your assembly to call it. Now again, because I'm doing this at runtime, I need to do this dynamically. So what I did is I looked to see how call site works, and I actually generate my own call sites. I pretend to be the compiler. So I'm emulating how dynamic works inside my commandlet.
So you're emitting IL?
I'm actually not emitting IL.
What is IL?
Okay.
I mean, it's interpreted something, right?
That's intermediate language. Yeah, that's the hard way, Glenn. I mean, sorry, that's the lengthy way. It's the obvious way, but it's the really lengthy and difficult way to do it. I'm not actually using reflection. What I'm trying to explain here is that I'm emitting my own call site. So I'm using the plumbing that the C# compiler has to support dynamic invocation of methods. I'm using it inside my own commandlet. It's not documented. I basically use reflector to figure out when I use the dynamic keyword in C# and I call a method that may or may not exist on an object with arguments that may or may not exist in the right order. I had a look at the code in reflector to see how does it generate a call site. So then I emulate that inside my commandlet so that I can figure out, so I can generate jobs on the fly from any asynchronous method with any number of arguments that are being passed to it. Because if I had to do all of that with reflection and emitting IL, can you imagine what a pain in the ass that would be? It would take a long, long time to figure that out, because I'd have to do my own overload resolution and everything, especially with respect to the generic flavors of those methods.
So you were able to leverage the existing plumbing that the compiler uses. You just have to give it what it needs to be able to do its job.
That's just to be able to come up with, to create a delegate to the asynchronous method I want to call. And once I have a delegate that I can invoke dynamically, then it's very easy to wrap that up in the job infrastructure inside PowerShell.
Gotcha. So the heavy lifting was getting to the place of having that delegate.
It's really hard to do that.
Did this use lightweight code gen? Because I know there's lightweight code gen as a way of doing like lightweight kind of emitting through delegates.
Sure.
Sounds a little bit like what you're talking about.
Dynamic methods are and all. Yeah, lightweight code gen, again, it's fine when you have a constrained scenario. You know what you're getting. But
I see.
When
this is fixed.
When it's fixed. In this case, I have a commandlet that's meant to be able to accept any method with any amount of parameters that's generic or non-generic, that's either void or not. And I have to basically create a delegate for that so that I can actually call it in the future with the parameters you've given it to me and wrap it up as a job. So normally you'd have to use reflection.emit to do that, and it's like, it's impossible because
it was definitely a non-trivial amount of work.
Yeah, which is why I only do non-trivial work for free. You know, I mean, the guys will know that a lot of the times I disappear for like months and I come out with something. I mean, I wrote the first eventing add-in for PowerShell v1. There was no way to handle .NET events in the first version of PowerShell, so I wrote an extension for that, which marshaled things to a queue, much like how PowerShell 2 does it. So I kind of like these kind of systems problems. So yeah, that's how it works right now. I mean, the code is on GitHub, Glenn. I'll point it to you, and you're free to, once it's in a better working state, you're free to play with it and ship it with Splunk or
Cool.
not.
Are you planning to publish this as like a PowerShell module that people will be able to just download and consume it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean it's on GitHub right now, but the goal is to put it up as a separate DLL and then put it on PowerShell Get, I guess, is an ideal spot for it, right?
Yep. Cool.
So-
That sounds awesome.
I
Yeah,
thought
it
it
does
was
sound
easy,
cool.
but it's not. It was really a big rabbit hole I kept falling into.
Oh no! I mean, it sounds awesome in terms of what you had to come up. Like, it sounds like it was not easy. Definitely not easy. But the good thing about these things that are not easy is when you can see what you make possible. That's rewarding.
Yeah. So the
Even
goal
though
of
it's
this
a
is
tremendous effort to get there, where you're cursing yourself probably a good portion along the way.
Yeah, the main goal of this is to, instead of forcing people to write small chunks of C# to abstract and hide the async stuff, this commandlet will let you move that into the script itself. So you can write a script that kind of looks like how you would use async and await in C#, but instead you're just using this commandlet and converting them into jobs.
Well, not only that, you're also making it easy to actually leverage the capabilities of async easily, because, like, my example is not that hard to write, but you're losing a lot of potential benefit when you do that.
That's it, yeah. I just wanted to convert it into something that people already are familiar with. So the job source adapter, I mean, they're not using PowerShell jobs, so it's in process, not out of process. So it's fast.
So the question I have is, when is this going to become something? When is some facility going to get baked into PowerShell to make this kind of stuff easier? It is awesome, the work that you're doing, but I don't think that lets Microsoft off the hook, considering
We actually have a hint.
Okay.
So Glenn, Jeffrey Snover was on the show not too long ago, and I had forgotten until somebody brought this up in the chat room just a few minutes ago. But I had pinged him on this issue briefly, and he said something to the effect of, and I'd have to look up the audio, but he said something to the effect of, this may be a moot sort of issue in the future. So I don't know what they're doing, but I know they're aware of it. So maybe we will see some change that's substantial enough that it'll kind of answer it in an elegant way.
The question is, when they say future, what does future mean in terms of years for mere mortals?
Yeah. Yep,
I can say that now being back outside Microsoft.
So I think we've covered a pretty good range of stuff, and I wanted to make sure. This was cool for me because this was a kind of a unique interview where we have two guests on, and they were teaching each other stuff. So that's pretty cool.
Cool.
So I want to. So it sounds like, Ushin, you're going to have at some point in the future. We'll put a link in the show notes to your GitHub repo, and people know anybody that's heard our previous shows with you on before. They know some of the ways to get in touch with you. But why don't you remind them? Are you still blogging on Nivet Inc.?
Yeah, I am. Just been kind of busy the last year, but I don't know how I'm still MVP. But I literally just put my head down for 2 months, say, okay, I better blog something or do something crazy and release it. And yeah, I'm still on nivot.org. It's nivot.org. I'm also on Twitter / Oising. It's OISING. I'm there. I'm never on IRC, as Joel is fond of reminding me every time I log on. And he says, well, who's that? So my blog is there, and my Twitter is the best thing. I'm pretty active on Twitter. My blog posts are fairly infrequent. I just can't write small blog posts. It's just depressing.
Yeah. No, I'm not even going to say anything because my blog posts are entirely absent.
Mm-hmm.
So what about you, Glenn? How can people follow up with what you're doing?
Well, you can follow me at your own risk. Gblock on Twitter. I am. I go in spurts, but I'm definitely one of the more active, probably amongst everybody I know. So yeah, pretty active on there. I do have a blog. I post periodically, but lately I haven't been doing a lot. I do need to do more. So Twitter's probably easy place to grab me. And you can also look at like some of the work I mentioned around what we're doing for Splunk. If you go to our Splunk organization, github.com/Splunk, you'll see that we have a Splunk SDK C# PCL, and that is our next generation SDK that supports async and await. So, Ocean, I'm anxious just to get Hal off my back to see if we can try out your library and see if it would make things better. And I know that, actually I should say, I'm anxious to see Hal try out your library with our SDK.
We'll see.
And see how that works. Because, you know, if it makes life easier, we can point customers to it when they ask us.
How do I consume this from PowerShell? Yeah.
Sure.
So cool.
Exactly.
Before we let you guys go, there's a question. There's a question that we've asked each of you once, and then a second question. And Jonathan, I think you said we're on the third question for both of them?
That's what I can tell from the research I quickly did. I think they're both on question 3.
Excellent. So let me see. I flipped a coin, and before the show, and Ushin, you came up first. So if you were on a mission to Mars, Ushin, and you had to take something with you to pass the time, what would it be? Did I even get the question right, Jonathan?
Yeah, you did.
Helena Christensen, maybe?
Nice, okay.
I know, but I think she still looks great for her age. Is that maybe out of context?
That's what I'm writing down. That's what I am writing down.
Okay. It's the first thing came into my head.
So, Glenn Block, same question to you.
PowerShell.
If you're on a mission to Mars and you needed something to pass the time, what would you bring?
That's a good question. Pass the time. Well, not gonna. I probably would bring like an iPad with like, I don't know. I would have to get a next gen iPad that has like a zettabyte of data, so I could pretty much store like every possible thing I could ever want on my iPad. There we go. Next gen iPad. When are we talking about? Is this like in like 200 years or no? You know, what time period are we talking about that I'm going to Mars?
Well, I mean, it's really whatever you want to put into the question, man. It's an open question for discussion.
Yeah, so let's just assume this is in the future. And they have really, really large iPads. And there you go. I get one of those.
With a 4.7-inch screen.
But remember, it's got to have a zettabyte of storage, which I only recently learned about how big a zettabyte is, and it is extremely big.
A really large iPad. All right. You know,
large storage.
I used to be
large storage-wise. I don't want a gigantic iPad. I want large storage capacity.
Could you fit all the existing data that currently exists in a zettabyte?
Easily, I think.
It's no.
No?
I actually did a big data talk on this. Let me see. I actually have a presentation on this, which I delivered a big. I'll find that out for you. I'll get you the information. But yeah, no, a zettabyte. If you took, I think it was 40 zettabytes is everything that's been said like since the beginning of time.
Wow!
Wow!
Every word. Yeah, I have a bunch of stats on this.
Is that as a WAV or MP3?
Yeah, I need to find this.
Or maybe it's
Somehow
ASCII text.
I will find that. I will get you the details. I might get it within 1 minute. If you just wait 1 second, I'll go and find out the data, so we can educate all of our listeners here. All right.
What is this? Zettabyte? Is it a zettabyte? Is it ZB? Is it
Zettabyte? Yeah, zettabyte.
Oh yes. Okay. Yeah.
A zettabyte is very
so
big.
That is very, very big. So we have petabytes, and then we have exabytes, then zettabytes, and then yottabyte.
Yottabyte is the biggest. Yeah, yottabyte is the biggest. Yeah. And there's a great diagram that shows like the comparison between them all. Like one is like a city, one is a So zettabyte is 1 sextillion bytes. But there's actually a chart, a great chart that I had found that compares all these different things. Wait, let's see if it's.
Oh, is it like one of my favorites is where. Is it like showing the scale of different things?
Yeah. Yep. It tells you like it would take up like a city, whatever. Let's see.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if I can find it.
So a zettabyte is 1 billion terabytes.
There you go. That gives you a foundation.
That's all.
Just that. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a lot. I'm reading the Wikipedia article on zettabyte. Anyway, that's boring
big.
radio for me to read that. So anyway, yes.
As of 2013, the World Wide Web is estimated to have reached 4 zettabytes.
Right. That's what I thought it was 4. I wasn't positive, but I thought it was 4. Yep.
A lot of bytes. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you guys, both of you. Ushin, especially for the super short advance notice that you were going to be on the show. And Glenn, it has been a pleasure as well. So thank you guys.
My pleasure as well. And it was good to meet you, Ocean, and to learn about that library that you built, which I will definitely be checking out.
Yeah, not done yet, but you can have a look at the source. I haven't checked in the task stuff, but soon, this week. But I'm on Twitter, reach out. I mean, I think I'm following you, I don't know.
Cool.
Yeah, you guys are both buds now.
Cool. By the way, here's a fun fact on zettabyte. So a zettabyte will fill 1,000 data centers, or about 20% of Manhattan. That's what I was looking for.
Wow.
And a yottabyte will fill in the states of Delaware and Rhode Island with 1 million data centers. So there you go. So I want one of those, but it's got to be small. It can't be the size of Rhode Island because I won't be able to take that on the ship. So yeah, I'm betting on the next gen iPad that's going to be 8 to 10 inches. Well, maybe I'm talking about 50,000 generations forward, but at some point there's going to be one that can store a zettabyte.
Yeah.
And with that, I'm
Our
done.
grandkids may have it at the rate things are growing.
Awesome.
I don't know. That's crazy. All right, guys. Thank you very much. And as usual, the podcast will be edited, and then it will make its way to the website in about a week or so. And yes, thanks and appreciate it. And thank you to everyone in the chat room who showed up as well. Although it was funny. It was a quiet chat room for interactivity with the guests. So we actually had some interesting side chatter going on, related to the topic and quite unrelated to the topic at the same time.
I don't think I was sarcastic enough or bitched enough. I said I was going to bitch.
You didn't. Yeah. That never showed up, did it?
Async support sucks. Hold on. Async support sucks in PowerShell. There you go.
Yeah.
I bitched.
I don't think they're going to add it to V5 either. I think they might ship a single function that just calls wait on the task, Glenn. That's all they'll do.
So they'll basically just do, all they're going to do is just recognize that you gave me a task and it'll just call wait. I see. Which is not much better than me just calling .result myself.
I don't
But-
even think they'll go that far. I think they'll just ship a built-in function called await that just accepts the tasks and calls wait on it, and that's it.
Gotcha. Hey
We'll
then.
see.
We will see.
All right.
All right,
Okay.
guys. We will talk to you later. It's been fun. Appreciate
Take
it.
care.
Good night.
Bye.